Rothfuss.
Here.
Senator Wasserberger.
Here.
Chairman Anderson.
Here. We have a quorum, so
Yes, sir.
go ahead.
Chairman Anderson, esteemed members of the committee, thank you much. Not sure how I got it signed to do a bill with a title of 13 on it, but let's make it lucky 13 today. Folks, this is just a joint resolution, which normally we kind of put those in the round can. This is actually one that does make a difference to Taiwan, and it matters to the state of Wyoming. This bill has to do, if you kind of read through it, the meat of it, we're a sister state with Taiwan. They're Wyoming's second largest trading partner. So they're of extreme importance to our state, particularly into our ag commodities and some of our energy things. 11th largest for the United States. So they're big there, but particularly in Wyoming. We have a visa exchange program. This helps keep that in place, that they don't have to apply for visas to come into the United States for tourism or business. And they're a huge tourism partner as well, on top of the other trade that we have. Beef exports are big, and we've actually got Wyoming ranches, got beef being served in restaurants in Taiwan at this point in time. Taiwan has continually brought trade delegations to Wyoming and helped sponsor Wyoming trade delegations to Taiwan. They're a pretty important trading partner. Country only 23 million people, so it's kind of tiny, and they relate to Wyoming really well. And back into it. So if you drop down to page 3, the first part of it's all just kind of what I just went through. Page 3, we're reaffirming our commitment to them. And you go on to page 4, section 2, appropriate participation in international organizations, health, safety, well-being. Previous United States administration historic diplomatic efforts to recognize Taiwan. That's of extreme importance to them. The problems they've got with their China, it's a big thing for them. Wyoming deepened economic, educational, and cultural bonds with Taiwan. Section 4, bottom of the page is the transmit copies of the President of the United States, President of the Senate, Speaker of the House, Representatives, Congress, Congressional delegation, and then most importantly, Taiwan's president and the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Seattle. So long and short, that's it's just a really important deal for the state of Wyoming and Taiwan, which, by the way, I'm not sure all of you have been here, but we actually have a trade office in Taiwan. Wyoming's one of the few states that has a staff trade office in Taiwan, and it's been a good program. Particularly the economic times we're in, Taiwan shows huge ability for us to increase foreign trade with the state of Wyoming, which is of great importance. That I'd stand for questions and ask for your favorable consideration.
Any questions for the presenter? Any questions? Any questions? Hearing none? Thank you. Thank you, Senator Driscoll, for the complete presentation. You didn't do 3 minutes, but you'll do 3 minutes on the floor.
I will.
Anyone else like to speak on House Joint Resolution 13? Or would you just like to show your support? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim McGagin with the Wyoming Stockbrokers Association. I won't repeat everything that the good senator said. We're very supportive of this bill. We've worked very hard for about the past 4 years to develop a working relationship with Taiwan. In 2019 and since 2018, we've seen the fastest percentage growth of U.S. beef exports of any nation has been with the nation of Taiwan, and with the product we've shipped over there, including, has been mentioned, the Wyoming product. We maintain a regular relationship with the trade office in Seattle. And as we're trying to build our industry here, build our processing of meat processing in Wyoming for both beef and lamb, we see Taiwan as not only an important market in and of itself, but the key to accessing other markets in Southeast Asia. That, Mr. Chairman, I just urge your support for the bill.
Any questions for Mr. McGagnon? Any questions? Any questions? Hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McGagnon, for your testimony. Thank you for being here with us. Anyone else on House Joint Resolution 13? Hearing none. Is there anyone on the Zoom?
Mr. Chairman, there are a couple attendees. Would they raise their virtual hand if they would like to provide public comment? Okay, it doesn't look like anybody's raising their hand, Mr. Chairman.
All right. All
Mr.
right. Well,
Chairman,
yeah.
I move. House
Wait a
Joint-
minute. Let me close public comment and then go ahead.
Can you close public comment?
I did. Yep. I closed it. Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
committee, what's your
Mr.
pleasure?
Chairman,
Yes.
we're in a hurry.
Yeah.
I move House Joint Resolution 13 do pass.
Seconded by Cooper.
Question.
Question being called. All in favor of House Joint?
Roll call.
Oh, gosh. Do a roll call.
After my
Then
every
Mike.
time.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah.
This is for House Joint Resolution 13. Senator Bateman,
Excuse me.
Senator Cooper,
Aye.
Senator Rothfuss,
No.
Senator Wasserberger,
Aye.
Chairman Anderson.
Aye.
House Joint Resolution 13, 3 ayes, 1 no, 1 excused.
House Joint Resolution 13 passes. Senate Minerals.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to take chairman's liberty and move House Bill 239 up to the second place. We have a presenter here right now that has promised to move it quickly. House Bill 239.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 239 is the student
Please
learner.
identify yourself.
Yeah, Mike Greer, Chairman of House Minerals, Speaker Pro Tem, all around good guy, Mr. Chairman. Okay,
Lawyer.
and a country lawyer.
Like Sam Urban.
So, Mr. Chairman, so working in the CTE world, what we're trying to do is tear down some barriers to get some high school students into industry and learning a trade and a job. One of the things we discovered this summer and looking at it is there is a little bit of ambiguity regarding workers' compensation coverage of the 16 to 18-year-olds. I personally read it to say that any legally hired student, but person in the extra hazardous jobs are covered. However, this has been an impediment because industry and school districts are nervous of liability in this case. Well, if you're able to make it clear that the student is covered by workers' compensation, your employer liability goes away and that liability by the school either goes away or is severely, significantly diminished. Goal here is we're real clear, 16, 18-year-olds working in extra hazardous employment are to be covered by workers' safety compensation. Next component of this then is to have workforce services put together what I'm going to call a safe harbor agreement, one like I use at the company that I run called a student learner agreement, which is recognized by OSHA to allow students an exception, and it's an exemption to the exception, being that they are able to work in extra ultra hazardous employment, okay, in machine shops in particular, with under a student learner agreement. And all we're trying to do is just get that form created by rules, put on the website. It's a clear, safe harbor. It's an easy to enter into the contract with the district and then the individual contracts with the students. We do this at Wyoming Sugar. We've been doing it now for 5 years. We just can't get everybody else to catch on because they're nervous about it. And this whole goal is pave the way, make this easy. Let's get these kids, boys and girls, in when they're 16, 17 years old. And so they, interestingly enough, under the OSHA rules, they can weld, but they can't grind their own welding. Senator Cooper knows what that means. Senator Anderson knows what that means. They're not very popular on the job site. But yeah, so we can get them in under these agreements and they can work the CNC machine and work a lathe with supervision and start to learn that trade or skill. So been real popular. While I haven't had a chance to talk to everybody, Mr. Chairman, I asked that simply like the Mining Association, CTE Group, Economic Development Group, just all show their support with a raise of hands versus spending more of your valuable committee time for this.
Are they raising their hands now?
I don't know if they're here.
And there's
Had two hands? Oh, had a hand up there. Oh, one up there. All right. All right. Any questions for Representative Greer? Any questions for Representative Greer? Hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Greer. Thank you for your presentation. And you've already had your supporters raise their hands. So I think that's closes public comment on this.
Mr. Chairman, there was one other gentleman on Zoom, Mr. Jason Wolf, and he didn't raise his hand. I don't know where he stands on this.
Okay.
Oops.
Mr. Wolf,
Yep. Hello. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason Wolf with Department of Workforce Services. Just make myself available for any questions. I think Chairman Greer did a good job explaining the bill. So
okay, good.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
you should probably ask if there's any opposition, just in case there is, but I don't think there will. You know, just
sure.
equity.
Is there any opposition to this House Bill 239? Any opposition?
All right.
Hearing none, we'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure?
I move House Bill 239 do pass, Mr. Chairman.
Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Any discussion?
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
Cooper.
Thank you.
Cooper. Call roll call.
Got it.
It's House Bill 239. Bateman,
Excused.
Senator Cooper,
Aye.
Senator Rothfuss,
Aye.
Senator Wasserberger,
Aye.
Chairman Anderson.
Aye.
House Bill 239, 4 ayes, 1 excused.
You squeaked by.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Kinski is a co-sponsor and very much on board with
I
this.
saw that, yeah. I'll call on him.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move right on to House Bill 166, which is a continuation from Monday. We laid it back on Monday. Is there any other public comment on House Bill 166? Any other public comment on 166? Is there any on the Zoomie?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Dale Cotton, or Cottoman, maybe, I'm not quite sure.
Mr.
All right.
Cottom, Mr. Cottom, are you on there?
He has been permitted. Mr. Cotton, can you turn your video and your microphone on, please?
Yes. Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, terrific. My name is Dale Cottom. I'm an attorney with Bailey Stock Harmon, Cottom and Lopez with offices in Cheyenne and Afton, and we represent Glenrock Energy. And we will have some proposed amendments to 166, which I believe were distributed earlier this week. So at any point in time, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like me to walk through those, I'm available to do so at your convenience.
Okay, thank you. That completes your testimony?
Well, Mr. Chairman, if you would like me to walk through our proposed amendments at any point during this committee meeting, I'm prepared to do so.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right,
Are they different?
no, they're the same. Same as what we had on Monday. Is there any other public comment? Any other public comment? Hearing none. Committee, what's your pleasure on House Bill 166? Moved by Cooper. Seconded by Wasserberger. Any discussion?
Chairman.
Yes,
On page 3, we've already amended this bill
yes,
and we have put in the WIC proposed amendments,
yes.
which many of the suggested amendments from, I guess, Glenrock are a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to bring in language on page 3, line 8. We would insert I guess renumber essentially what it says: before authorizing or approving the closure of an electric generation facility as proposed in a rate case, integrated resource plan, or other submission to the commission shall consider the effect on available, reliable, dispatchable electricity to Wyoming customers and the impact that any shortage of available energy nationwide may have on Wyoming customers. That is language from House Bill 155. And we're taking that from the very last page of House Bill 155 and inserting it on line 8.
Is there a second?
Second,
Moved and seconded.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I do have a suggestion for a friendly amendment. When we contemplated this at the last meeting, there was discussion of striking the word closure in the first sentence. Looks like it's one sentence in the first part of the first clause of the long sentence, and replacing it with the word retirement so that it would read before authorizing or approving the retirement of an electric generation facility as proposed in a rate case. That was to conform with the rest of the other bill, House Bill 166, as I understand it. That was suggested language, and I would suggest that friendly amendment if it is friendly.
It's a friendly
I
amendment,
think
Mr.
it's a
Chairman.
friendly amendment. Yeah, yeah. Further discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Senator Cooper.
with that said, added to that, page 1, line 6 discusses closing electric generation rather than retiring. Can we change that in that same amendment there? Page 1, line 6. Utilities closing electric generation, should that be retiring also?
Maybe. Mr. Chairman,
I'm not following that in this. Are you saying that's in this B?
no, Mr. Chairman, he's on House Bill 166.
Oh, you're on
page one,
page
line
1.
6,
Oh,
in the title.
in the title.
And I'm just gonna look and try to decide if there's a reason not to make that change. I think it's probably the right choice.
Was that a friendly amendment to your amendment?
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Senator
as the second, I'm not sure yet, but I think it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, or should
Just
we
a
make it
second.
a separate?
If it's an issue, it's probably fine as it is.
I think it's probably right, actually. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would support Senator Cooper's suggestion after just looking over the bill one more time, where it's at right now with all of the amendments. I think retirement is correct there.
Is it retirement or is it rate recovery for public utilities retiring electric generation?
Let's see, limiting
Retiring, I think.
recovery for public utilities retiring electric. Probably retiring. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think it's probably retiring.
Yeah, it is.
So
That's a friendly amendment,
yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
as a
Okay.
second, I agree.
Okay, all right. So everybody understands the amendment to insert paragraph B and change retiring or change closing to retiring. Any other discussion? Other discussion? Other discussion? Hearing none. We don't need a,
Question on the motion.
Just question on that motion.
yeah, just question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Senator Ruffles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back on the bill, a proposed amendment that I don't think ended up, I don't think it was in this WIAC amendment. Let me just double check. As I recall, and my apologies if it is in here, but I don't think it is. There was a suggestion in the amendments on page 2, line 13, to strike and includes dispatchability as clarification. I think that was one of the commissioners that suggested that. And on page 3, line 7, strike and includes reliability, which was again, I believe, I'm getting nods. That's always good. And that's accurate. Yeah, okay. All the right nods are in place. So that's my motion.
All right. So everybody understands
Okay,
the
so
amendment, page 2,
I need-
line 13.
Yeah, page 2, line 13, after the Romanet 2, strike
Includes,
and includes dispatchability, leave the semicolon.
and then on page 3, line 7,
and includes reliability.
Strike
And
and
includes-
includes reliability, leave the, looks like we need a period there. Yep, leave the period in place.
Second.
second, any discussion, any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Squeaked by there, Rothus. Any other changes that
Who seconded that last?
Wasserburger?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Cooper.
I'd like to ask that we, the Glenrock amendments, we lay those aside again for further consideration while we digest everything we've done to this bill and see which of those are already here or carried into another bill, if that's possible. I don't think we should by any means throw them away, but I think we need to really digest what all we've done so far before. I
Okay,
can-
and we can bring those amendments on the committee of the whole or the second reading too.
Yes, sir.
If when we read it all in, we need more.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
You know, we already have been through them, but in the last meeting, I did invite comment, and it doesn't have to be right now, but if I would be interested to know if anybody had any support or heartburn for specific provisions, either through public comment or through an email. But we did go through these provisions before, so I know the original advocate supports them and why. I just know that others that were present didn't have an opportunity, I believe, prior to our last meeting to review them. I don't believe I've received any follow-up comment from any of the other stakeholders, but we are getting like, several hundred email a day right now, if not into the thousands. So if you did, I'm sorry, I didn't read them yet.
I think they all liked what we did, Senator Rothfuss.
Oh.
They all liked it, yeah. And I don't think I got an email about it. And I looked at them.
You did, you
Yeah, I
got through
did.
all 1,000, good.
No, I didn't get through all 1,000. I did look at them. All right, no further discussion on House Bill 166.
Question,
Question on the bill. Let's do a roll call, please.
that's a good approach.
I like the roll call. Yeah.
Yeah.
House Bill 166, Senator Bateman,
Aye.
Senator Cooper,
Aye.
Senator Rothfuss,
Aye.
Senator Wasserberger,
Aye.
Chairman Anderson.
Aye.
House Bill 166, 5 ayes.
Next bill to come before us is House Bill 155, Electric Generation Reliability. I think there's somebody here to present that. No?
It feels awkward now.
Oh.
We just moved it into the other bill.
We just made it as far as that.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Mr. Chairman, without objection, I'd ask that it be tabled.
Without objection, we're going to table 155. 166.
155.
Any objection on 155? There's some amendments that we had on 155, but we've kind of included 155 into 166. No objections to withdrawing it or tabling it? No objections, we'll table it then. Gee,
Next bill 170.
Next bill to come before the committee is House Bill 170. Wyoming Economic Development Zones. I think there's people here for that.
I guess somebody should.
Can we keep with our average pace? I wonder.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Representative Henderson is here. That would be possible.
Right. To stick with the average, we've got 2 minutes and 12 seconds.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Representative Henderson.
Thank you,
welcome to the
Mr.
committee.
Chairman, members of the committee. It's a great honor to be here before. I appreciate your time. I do have to get back to the chamber, to sit in the chair and try to get your bills, your files working too. I sent some information to all of you. All right, if we could just look at this one page. All right, why you read this bill and I would ask, and the question just screams at you, why do we want to do this? If you read it, it looks a lot like what the Business Council is doing now, right? And so I'm gonna be upfront with you. I borrowed this from Minnesota, Georgia, Ohio, some other states, and what they're doing in economic development. In Minnesota's case, they use the model of need indicators, those things that are looking at distressed areas, underdeveloped, underperforming, and success indicators, those things that are working, like in our state, carbon capture, right? Blockchain, innovative technology, and so forth, right? And so the middle of this here, what I wanted to do was say, look, we need to look at how can we move forward from where we came through the last year or so, and what are some options on the table that we aren't taking into consideration. This simply put is a way to put a tool in the toolbox for the local communities and the local leaders to get economic development going that they want, that they feel they need in their communities. And we have some examples of good activity right now. Forward Cody. Over here, Cheyenne leads, the data center cluster that's booming here up in the Northeast, down in the Southwest, and so on, right? But what we're missing is the opportunity to leverage the Economic Development Administration's funding that's available. You look at a map of the United States, the back of this sheet has a map, shows all the economic development districts. And over Wyoming is a big white spot. And we had a really hard decision just yesterday on tolling I-80. If you look at those areas along I-80, I think I'm looking at, can we put an economic development district along there, maybe 3 of them, and get some help with some funding to leverage those dollars, right? And so the center of this is highlighted. I'll just review that for you real quick. This here offers an opportunity for the council to take a lead position and pull it all together. Not asking them to do anything they aren't now. They've already got opportunity zones in the state. But here's the thing. Wyoming doesn't have any zones that are funded, right? All around us, there's about 40, 45 zones. Montana has 10. They're all active. Ours aren't. So here's an opportunity. House Bill 170 requires the council to identify the zones, assist with developing a comprehensive economic development strategy. What's that for? That's a recipe, if you will, that is required to help put together a plan at the local level to have a basis for going forward with that and getting some funding and moving forward to the next step. This provides a framework for the council to help the local areas develop that application. Requires reports. There's a preliminary report in November where we are now. There's a section in here that talks about streamlining regulations, talks about recommendations for needed legislation, talks about things that we can do here as a legislature to help the local areas get their economic development going in the right direction. Got a new college going on in Northeast. We've got other things going on. So we provide recommendation to your committee, your joint committee. And I'll tell you right now, I miss being on the committee. But I'm trying to do the right things out here. We haven't learned with you guys the last 4 years. No, and here's the key point. No appropriations needed to implement this, right? And if you look at the list of indicators, the final point I would make, senators, is this is mostly in the words of the folks who are on the front line doing the hard work for our state and their communities. And that simply put is the bill. We have an initial report, recommendation and so on, and then an annual report. Now, another key piece is a SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunities, and threat. This is fundamental to any business or public venture where you have to look at what's going on around you in terms of your strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. You have to pull that together with decision makers to make sure that the analysis is complete and accurate to support the kind of decisions that are wanting to be made. Well, 170 works for that. 170 provides a tool, right? And I have broad support. I sent this out several times to many people. And the esteemed senators, Wassenberger wanted to sign on the first version. And I sure hope he's still with me on this because it's going to have a potential, an exponential potential to leverage, like I say, those dollars from EDA. So that's the bill. And I ask for your favorable consideration. I know there's some folks maybe online here. James Klesson is a key individual to talk to what's going on in his area. But that's it, sir.
Any questions for Representative Henderson?
Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? Yes, Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Henderson, I agree almost nearly 100% with what you're trying to do here. One thing that I've seen in some of the, for example, with the Bighorn Mountain Coalition, it was same theory, same idea. But what develops on those is what's good for Sheridan is not necessarily good for Grable, or what's good for, in this case, maybe Cody is not necessarily good for Thermopolis. So how do we maintain some kind of parity across this whole district rather than one community rising to the top and everybody else kind of being left behind?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I appreciate that question. And I would just build on that example is that we don't all have to be alike, right? We have some wonderful things going on in Senator Rothfuss area with regard to that beautiful business park there and, Underwriter Laboratories. As you mentioned, some things going on there. And I'm sure James will have some others. But I think that what we want to do is we want to capture those things that are working well and benchmark them for other areas. See, one of the things that our state is rural. And the rural areas, they don't have the skill sets that, like we do maybe here in Laramie County or over in the Albany or, and so on. So I think what this offers is an opportunity to like up in Pinedale, a point was made there last time it was presented about the importance of understanding the economics of tourism and how it's looked at from that particular local area. And that's the key of this is building a policy from the ground up rather than from the top down. Now, we did have in Dow a few years ago, spent a lot of money on it. And I think one of the key things when you're talking about development is priorities and how those priorities are developed and measured, the metrics that we use to measure those priorities, how you're doing, how well or not, right? But I think I've answered your question if you have anything else. Okay.
Other questions for the presenter? Okay, thank you.
No.
Representative Henderson, and you have some people that are going to speak on the bill?
Yes, sir. If I may, sir, I may have to leave in a few minutes, just to be up in the chair. Okay.
Okay, all right. And who's ready to speak?
Mr. Chairman, James Klessens with Forward Cody and the Wyoming Economic Developers Association.
Go ahead.
Thank you for allowing me to participate in this manner. It is really a great thing to be able to have a citizens legislature advised by citizens in this way. So it's great use of technology. I first want to express appreciation to Representative Henderson for sponsoring this bill and having the foresight to establish a really solid framework for how economic development can actually happen in our communities, because I don't know that there's too many people who will disagree that everything that happens in that arena happens at a local ground level. It doesn't happen with the state agencies. It doesn't happen within the legislature. It happens with the boots on the ground people that are doing it day in and day out. And one of the things that we observe as economic developers is that there's a lot of policies and there's a lot of programs that are created legislatively that sometimes don't really get informed as well by the people on the ground using them as maybe they should. And so what we took upon the task of working with Representative Henderson to build this bill, we were thinking about three different things. First, a means to enhance cooperation amongst regions. There isn't a competition between Cody and Thermopolis or Buffalo and Sheridan. If there is, it's because they've manufactured it. But by and large, every community is an independent place, and they need to figure out where their strengths are and work upon those. So we're asking that the Business Council designate regions that make sense together, economic watersheds, if you will. The second thing is to focus on what's important and what's real in those communities, because by and large, what happens is we do a lot of copycat work in the arena of economic development and many other things where we see somebody do something good and we think we should do that too, but it may not necessarily fit our communities. And so what happens in economic development planning, good planning, is you do this SWOT analysis that the representative spoke about, and then you decide what makes sense here, what makes sense at home, and you focus your energies on that. And then the last piece that we really felt was important is to grow the capacity of our programs and also our people. As I said, economic development happens on the ground. We need help getting people to become trained to use the programs, understand the tools that are available to them, and also to advise your body and the whole legislature as to what tools make sense, what tools don't, and how do we tweak and modify them so that they are tools that are more of an advantage than an impediment. And so with that, I would strongly encourage your support of this legislation. Again, it's a no-cost legislation at this point. We can use programs and services that are available at this point today. I would stand for any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Clausen? Was it? Clausens, yes. Senator. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I assume your Cody Group is the local economic development authority there. And we've got them all across the basin, for example, Hot Springs, Washakie, Bighorn, but they're all competing with each other rather than pulling together. What kind of infrastructure can you suggest? This is a good step, I think, but how do we prevent that competition rather than a joint effort for the whole region? Again, same kind of deal. If you're involved in this, you're going to fight hardest for Cody, not Thermopolis. So how do we make sure that doesn't happen? I'm still confused about equality across these districts.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Cooper, thank you for asking that question. You may have just teed up about a 2-hour conversation. I wish to do that. But what I can tell you is, I've got 32 years of experience in economic development. And one thing I have learned in that time working in Montana and now working in Wyoming is what's good for Cody is good for Thermopolis, and what's good for Thermopolis is good for Cody. What is presumed in an economic development district, which is really the end result of this economic development district, economic development zone, whatever you want to call it, is that those entities would work on projects that are regional in scope. And so in the Bighorn Basin, as you've maybe presumed, we could talk about tourism, we could talk about broadband development, we could talk about traffic and infrastructure, transportation issues, we can talk about value-added agricultural processing. And so what we do is, as an economic development region, we do projects that make sense on a regional basis and let the communities do their own. We support them and we grow their capacity, but we certainly don't want to pit one community against another, because I, for one, truly believe that Cody is unique in its own characteristics, as is Thermopolis, and each need to be given the tools and the capacity to get things done for their community. And instead of competing, that's a waste of time competing with other people. It's much more beneficial if we just deal within our own parameters and deal with what we can. So I hope that answered your question, sir.
Go ahead, Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will agree with part of your statement. What's good for Thermopolis is good for Cody, but it doesn't reciprocate. And the people in Thermopolis or Worland or Graybill they've all spoke to me about that exact statement. That's a statement that comes out of Cody, but it doesn't necessarily reciprocate. So again, that creates that competition. So that's my concern on how we make this work all the way across these districts rather than just one area, because it'll be the same way across the mountain. What's really positive for Sheridan may not be that good for Buffalo or Gillette, or what's really good for Gillette doesn't necessarily benefit our folks from Sheridan. So it isn't that way now. And I'm not seeing, the rhetoric is good, but I'm not seeing a real foundation for making that work.
Mr. Klessen, would you like to address that or?
I would, Mr. Chairman and Senator Cooper. One of the things I've learned in my experience is that trust can't be built with words. And so I won't use rhetoric to try to explain to you how I believe it can work. But I, for one, am a big supporter of many of the businesses in Thermopolis, and I always will be. And I think a number of my counterparts in Cody do. One of the things that you've watched over the last 50 years is the evolution of the Bighorn Basin and who was the lead community in the basin. I mean, it shifted from Lovell to Graybull to Worland, and maybe now back to Cody, if that's people's perception. And I will tell you, every time that's happened, it's happened because the capacity of the community, the amenities of the community, the infrastructure of the community, the attitude and the perception of what it's like to be there and live there are all the reasons that happened. It's not because we have a regional program that that causes the competition. It actually helps to enhance those. So I would love to prove that to you, sir.
Any other questions for Mr. Klessen? Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Klessen, for being with us.
Thank you.
And I see we have another speaker there. Please identify yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Charlene Murdoch with the Greater Cheyenne Chamber of Commerce, and speaking today on behalf of the Wyoming Federation, the Wyoming Business and Industry Federation, sorry about that, which is a group of about a dozen chambers of commerce across the state. We represent more than 5,000 businesses, and we are here today to testify for this bill. We think just as our group works together very closely, we have worked together on some collaborative grants that we can apply for within our federation, and then any one of our chambers can take advantage of programs inherent in those grants. We know that working together makes us stronger, and that we're not looking for any one community to gain more from these grants. We're just looking for having the opportunity that there are small chambers of commerce that may not be able to apply for a grant, but we as a larger chamber have the resources to do that, and we can avail those funds then to all of our communities. So we feel that this bill, with broadening the economic development zones, allows us to work outside of what are considered normal boundaries of cities or counties. It offers a collaborative process, especially with the SWOT analysis. So where do we have our strengths, and what might be a strength in one of our communities may not be in another, but we can use those common strengths to work together, and we can help take those strengths of one community and expand those out to others. So I just think that this gives us some tools in our toolbox that we don't have now. We would support the bill and ask for your favorable approval.
Any questions for Ms. Murdoch? Any questions for Ms. Murdoch? Thank you, Ms. Murdoch. It's a pleasure to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Any other speakers, any other public input into House Bill 170? Hearing none. Representative Henderson, are you wrapped up?
I just wanted to add a couple of things, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, if I may.
Sure.
Addressing Senator Cooper's good question. We all have competing entities within our own communities, right? And so I would go back to what we talked about before in terms of priority, right? I mean, what's a priority in one community is not necessarily going to be the same priority in another. And so when you have a finite amount of resources, I think there's a lot of different ways to do the analysis and get together as local leaders do and make those discussions happen and then have those decisions come together. We do that every year here, right? In the legislature. The other thing I wanted to mention is some more of the good things that are going on in our state. We talked briefly about the carbon capture. We had the integrated test center. We've done the consolidation over the last couple of years in the Wyoming Energy Authority. Right. We added in the mining aspect. We got a lot of good possibilities going on with rare earth minerals and so on. And we have tremendous potential, I think, over in Albany and some other parts of the state in terms of technology. In Casper, most of Natrona County has a foreign trade zone. Not the whole county, but it has that. And there's benefits associated with that. Other places have already stepped forward, like Fort Cody and Lincoln Uinta Joint Powers Board, and they've applied for grants and loans, just like the last speaker was talking about. Here in our county, we have the ground-based strategic deterrent coming. And that's going to be 2,400 jobs, $19 billion. It's going to affect every one of the missile sites in Wyoming and in our region, right? That's going to be a tremendous thing to get prepared for. So I think that what we have is the opportunity to get fiscal synergies to develop positive externalities that will cascade out across our state. I mean, we have rural states that don't have the wallets. They don't have the wallets to pay the sales tax and so on, right? And so what we're doing in certain areas of our state, I think we need to look at in terms of the future and the opportunity to bring those forward. In this interim coming up, I know there's going to be a closer look by the Minerals Committee at all things economic development. And I think that's tremendous. I look forward to learning more about that. But that's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your presentation. We'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure? Move by Cooper, seconded by Wasserberger. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Yes,
Thanks.
Senator Roth.
And this is probably actually a question back to the sponsor. My apology for not asking it a couple minutes ago, but on the discussion point, you know, I like the concept an awful lot. We talked about it. I appreciate the background on it. The one thing that is giving me just a little bit of heart run up, because I don't know how it'll play out, is pages 4, 5, and I guess on to 6 a little bit. This is the list of things that, as I understand it, you're doing an assessment's being done. I assume that's kind of the business council and association you have with local leaders up there. Okay, good. To determine these development zones. And the B provision clear back on page 2 is that the council shall consider the following need indicators. So we've got a good list of need indicators. Romanet 5 is the extent to which any of the following facilities or industries could be feasibly established, maintained, or expanded within a proposed zone. And then we've got a relatively long laundry list, but I'm contemplating how this would play out as they're trying to prioritize or create zones, because the first half of the list is sort of like things we already do. But at the same time, they're things we all love. And I'm just trying to think, does this then end up oddly biasing the efforts of these development zones into areas where you've got effectively coal, oil, and gas? Because that's what about half of this is talking about. And then even the rest, it's not talking about coal, oil, and gas, talks largely about energy until you get down into the high letters over here, where you've got value-added ag, value-added outdoor recreation, fintech, and innovation, which almost seem like afterthoughts. And I'm thinking about it from a diversification standpoint. It's like, it seems a little top-heavy in de-diversifying almost. So I was just asking about that. What are your thoughts on that? Was the discussion in terms of the development of that list?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr.
Thank you,
Representative
Mr.
Henry.
Chairman. Thank you for that question. Well, you remember a few years ago, we spent all that money on Endow. And the first report that we got was a very detailed report, taking a look at our labor sectors across the state, right? The different occupations and whatnot, right? And so everything on the success indicator is just like on our bucket list, right? It's things that we would like to do. It's on our list and on our radar. And if the opportunity presents itself and the pieces come together right, well, then I think it's something that we should make more of a consideration of. In no way do each and every one of these indicators have to be applicable to every location in the state. And I think there's flexibility in how you define those districts with the commitment of the local leaders in terms of what indicators seem to make sense for that area. A couple of years ago, there was a gentleman with an organization that went around to every one of the 23 counties and then borrowed the concepts from the gentleman Deming that lives from Wyoming, the total quality management concept, the brainstorming concept, right? And then every county, he pulled local leaders together and did that process to develop lists for each local county, kind of an update. And I think that's part of it. I mean, you have to do an ongoing process of review and improvement, right? Some counties, well, like the one up here that had the sugar factory fail. This would have been perfect for them to help leverage of dollars to help that. Other counties, they got activities going on. It's basically, they don't have the skill sets or they don't have the money. And so this is just a list that's made up in the words, the people who are on the ground, the boots on the ground doing the work. Value-added agriculture, added by the folks in agriculture. I think there's other opportunities in agriculture aren't mentioned. Smart agriculture, how you use the soil, how you analyze the soil. I think there's opportunities in drone management, unmanned vehicles, to do things in certain parts of our state with our game and fish and so on. They're already using those kind of things. So I think my answer to the question is the sky's the limit. I'm an optimist, but I think the hard fact is at the end of the process, after the SWOT analysis is done and the commitment of the leaders is known and the resources are defined that we're going to need to get things done, that's the hard decision that has to be made in every single area. And it's going on every day all around us.
Well,
Yes.
that narrative sounds better than this list, though, right? That narrative is based on going around and figuring out what the needs are for the communities.
Make a great
determining through a SWOT analysis.
second read amendment.
Okay, so you're not averse to
Wait,
that. You don't love this.
wait,
list.
Sorry,
Wait,
Mr. Chair. Sorry,
wait.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry,
Point of
Mr.
order. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, sometimes I get mixed up and I'm hard of hearing.
Yep.
And if people could address the chair, that would be good.
Yep, that'd be good. Okay, go ahead, Senator Rothfuss.
Mr. Chairman. So representative, not married to the list, but you're married to the concept of working with the communities and trying to determine through some type of SWOT analysis what's appropriate for that community.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir, definitely. And you know what? This is an opportunity to put together a cohesive plan to pull everything together across our state. We want the dollars to be used at the right time in the right place for the right reasons, for the right outcome, right? We don't have dollars to waste, right? And so like the gentleman mentioned earlier, the community needs to be involved initially. That's key, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Discussion? Hearing none, we'll close the public comment, and we have moved and seconded this bill. We just need to vote on it, I guess. Mike, why don't you do a roll call on it, please?
For House Bill 170, Senator Bateman,
No.
Senator Cooper,
No.
Senator Rothfuss,
Aye.
Senator Wasserberger.
Aye.
Chairman Anderson.
Aye.
House Bill 170, 3 aye, 2 no.
House Bill 170 passes the Senate Minerals Committee. Wasserberger, will you take that on the floor, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, good. Do you guys have any other interim topics you'd like to address? We had a list this morning and I didn't have any more. We put all ours on the list. Yes.
The little bit we talked about the other day.
I want to turn your mic on.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, you and I visited a little bit the other day about carbon capture and coal marketing on a more global basis. Is that something that would be a proper interim topic? I'm not sure if it would or wouldn't, but I guess I'm asking the committee their opinions on it. And my thought process on it is, we've spent a lot of time talking about the ITC and the carbon capture programs up there that are being experimented with. Is it time to quit talking and ask for some action and see if we've had somebody rise to the top, and then possibly get the business council or some entity in Wyoming to go out and help whoever is there, or maybe one of those aren't the right process, or I don't know yet, but to go out and select a carbon capture process and go market it globally, and then wherever we choose to market it, back that up with the cleanest coal in the world. I don't know why that couldn't be done. Some things we don't do in the state very well is really blow our own horn. You know, we've got the capability of doing the carbon capture. We've got great coal. We got a good infrastructure to get the coal out of here. We're going around with Washington, but it's 400 miles further to Corpus, and they'll take our coal. There's been talk about an outlet in Mexico. They'll take our coal. So we have other options, and should that be something that we're exploring now?
And I think you're going to hear a lot about carbon capture, and maybe not the global marketing, but a lot about carbon capture and different subjects that we have on the list. As far as the global marketing, the School of Energy Resource or the University of Wyoming can foster the idea, but they can't market it. They've got to turn it over to a private enterprise to be able to market the thing. And we're getting close to that with that XPRIZE project up there at on the ITC. Whoever comes out the winner of that obviously will be marketed worldwide with a carbon capture solution.
Okay, I understand that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand that part of it. But we've studied this and we've talked about it and we've experimented and we've not seen any action. Is it time for action on these projects?
Well, not till we can prove carbon capture works in high volume. And the high volume is a trick. We know it works in the lower volumes, but they've got to have a high volume one to be able to market it to the plants in the US. And obviously the big market is in China. But they've got to be able to handle large volumes of CO2. Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, to Senator Cooper's question, there certainly are existing amine-based technologies for stripping the CO2 out of active flue gas at full scale. And you can go up to the Boundary Dam, take a look at one of those facilities. They've got large scale down in Texas at Petronova, outside of Houston, a great facility, great operation. To make that economically viable currently, though, based on that technology, you typically have to couple it with enhanced oil recovery and have a full, vertically integrated solution where you have every piece along the supply chain. Then all of a sudden it starts to make sense. Trying to come up with another technology, which we're working on at the ITC, but that's the challenge of retrofitting, is getting to the point where it becomes economically viable, and very few have been proven out at scale. So that's why that's still in R&D. So you've got these two competing concepts. One is just ridiculously expensive, where if you don't have the utilization as the key component for the cost driver, nobody wants to do that. So looking for something that's scalable is still R&D, and we're putting money into that. On the other side of the equation, things that we could be working on, probably should have been working on a decade ago, if not further back, is alternative approaches that are not old traditional coal-fired power plants where your stack gas is a challenge to strip the CO2 from. So right now, universities working on some oxy-combustion techniques where you have pure oxygen combusting the coal. It's a heck of a lot easier if you don't have nitrogen available to do a strip off at the other side, right? Great technology. We're trying to scale that up. And there are other technologies available. Again, we visited a facility with a company called Three Rivers that was doing an alum cycle reactor, which uses the carbon dioxide as the working fluid in a very high temperature reactor system. And great technology. They've demonstrated it with natural gas as the fuel. They were interested in partnering with us on using Powder River Basin coal. They're using lignite in a demonstration, I think a 50 megawatt reactor, if I recall correctly, in South Dakota, I want to say. So there are a lot of options out there. And yes, now is the time. last year was the time. 10 years ago, definitely the time. All of those things require tens of millions of dollars before anybody wants to come and sit down with us of capital investment. Honestly, I've always advocated for every one of those where we join as an equity partner. And when we step forward as an equity partner, it would be very easy to assemble an investment team because the state of Wyoming would be behind it. But those are the challenges, is that unless you're bringing equity to the table, everybody wants to hear your pitch and everybody wants you to go build that good idea, but bringing the equity to the discussion has been the challenge. So I think it's always worth talking about. It's always worth doing the trips. It's always worth reaching out and trying to engage with these stakeholders. But that has been the history of at least my perception of the challenge has been, if you don't have $50 million to bring to the conversation, it's not a long conversation.
The issue has been, we can use it for EORI, but everybody doesn't have an oil field to use it on. They want to be able to handle the CO2 from their plant and do something with it. And whether that's capturing it or finding some other use for it, that's what we're about on the ITC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Another possible subject, I've just been rolling stuff around in my head and listening to people that are asking me questions. On the renewables, we're building these turbines one right after another, and we don't like the looks of them, but they're here and they're going to be here, and it is part of the future of the world, if you will. And we were given some pretty significant tax exemptions to these people for bringing their equipment here. But rather than that, shouldn't we be giving tax exemptions to those companies that are willing to bring their manufacturing here, manufacture it here, utilize it here? I think that would be a better use of these exemptions, and it creates jobs and it gets those turbines off the road from the blades off the road from Louisiana or Texas, wherever they're coming from here. And along with that, on the same basic subject, how do we go about reclaiming these things without just put them in a landfill? There's got to be a better answer to what we're doing. But I think if we could bring that manufacturing here, that would be a big thing, and maybe that's an incentive program rather than just trying to get them here to build.
Just so you know, there is at least 2 economic development groups that are working on getting that manufacturing to a couple of places in Wyoming. As far as the blades, there's one place I know of in my hometown that they're putting them in the sand out there, not in the landfill, but in the sand, and they're covering them very, very lightly in the sand because there's people talking about recycling those. They're just fiberglass. We can recycle them. And one of the guys in Casper was going to recycle them, and then he didn't get the whatever it was he was going to do. But there are other people that can do that. One of the problems we have is the one is in like Mississippi, and we'd have to haul them all down to Mississippi. So we're trying to get that recycle plant also in Wyoming. So we'd start recycling those. They change them out every 10 years. And so there's a lot of material that could be recycled.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Those are good things that are happening, but can we, what we're talking about is an interim subject. Should that be something we're talking about to incentive? That's a hard word.
Incentivize.
Yeah.
Incentivize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These folks into moving faster and getting here. Can we help them cause that to happen by studying this in the interim and maybe coming up with a good program to help those folks along?
Might be able to. Senator Rothfuss.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, a couple of thoughts there. One is that we do have a full manufacturing sales tax exemption currently that's been on the books for decades and honestly hasn't, to my knowledge, brought any manufacturing. So I don't know how we could lower the taxes on manufacturing at this point in time. which is, it's regrettable that we can't find a way to attract good manufacturing to Wyoming. There certainly is interest, and it would be valuable to have that manufacturing here. It does seem like Wyoming would be incredibly attractive. And honestly, I don't know why somebody decides to build the blades in the state to the south of us instead of Wyoming, to be perfectly honest, even drawing from the same workforce. We typically have workforce problems, right? It's a good question. And that's one that we should ask the WBC to maybe look into and tell us an answer, because it seems pretty unfathomable to me that you'd opt to build just south of the border instead of north when you have these tax exemptions. So I like that concept, but the other side of it is, to some degree, that's a revenue concept as well. I think we probably will bring back that sales and use tax amortization bill that was not ready for prime time. It was one that I started working on. We had it through the Minerals Committee. It passed our Senate Minerals Committee, you'll recall. And then there were some concerns raised, and I tried to address them during this session and was never comfortable that they were addressed. So the pause button was pushed on that, but it does get to some degree at some of the concepts you're saying. Maybe we can improve upon that as well. But the two other things I'd note on turbine blades, one is that there is research at the University of Wyoming looking at precisely that as well. We've got a few startups throughout the state that I know are looking at it. I've been contacted by a couple that were interested in working through concepts, and then the university has some ongoing research. And then we did pass legislation, was it last year or the year before, from this committee, I think, yeah, that provided for the opportunity to use turbine blades as backfill, as you're providing the backfill for remediation on coal-produced sites. So as you're trying to restore and remediate those huge seams, there's an opportunity which can provide a little bit of economic support for both some startup industry as well as for the mine. So that's what I recall.
That was last year.
That was last year.
Last year we did that, yeah. And one of the problems with that is they would be buried too deep for us to recover them, to recycle them. So I think we can do that, but we don't want to. And I don't blame the mines. They don't want to bury them just with a thin layer on them. They're going to put them in the backfill wherever they put them in. So that didn't go very far with some of your buddies in Gillette.
Right. And Mr. Chairman, it's always just a matter of economics and timeline. I think DEQ is amenable to maybe some level of patience. Maybe we can work with them to make sure that it could be a temporary repository, or it could be a fill space, because having it right on the rail line was incredibly appealing and having basically infinite capacity, right? It was also appealing. So if you can couple those two things with the existing program, it might be beneficial in the long run.
I'll put these two on the list.
Okay,
We'll see what-
that was my question, is are
see what
they
happens.
interim topics? Or-
They could be. They could be.
I don't know if they are or not. The other one that I would really think we should look into, if we're the Minerals Committee, is how can we generate more value added to our natural gas across the state of Wyoming. We've got vast resources on the west side that are sitting there because we don't have a market. So how do we create a market for that natural gas that utilizes, or that results in a product that we can sell? And this is back to the private sector, but we got to incentivize the private sector to come here somehow. And when we burn natural gas for whatever purpose, the byproducts are, well, we have a chemist here. We have nitrogen, hydrogen, water, and CO2. We're getting close to capturing the CO2. Nitrogen, if I'm not mistaken, that's urea. That's what we use in fertilizer. Hydrogen, we're on the very cusp of great fuel cell technology. How can we go out and bring that kind of research to Wyoming to try to learn how to utilize our natural gas better and come up with some serious products that we can sell on the global market or in the national market, either one. With what we already have such an abundance of and a lack of market for.
Yeah, the value added idea is a great one. And one of the things the School Energy Resource is working on is hydrogen. And we can strip that hydrogen out of our natural gas, and there's huge markets for it right now. But we've got to put the infrastructure in to do that. And they're not going to do the infrastructure. They're working on how that infrastructure would look. And we hope to have that in Wyoming, not somewhere else.
That's exactly it. We need to talk about how we're going to promote these projects in Wyoming.
Yeah.
And I don't know if those are interim subjects or not. I've not, we're so busy here discussing whether or not we can sell eggs to the local market that we forget the bigger picture of things sometimes. And these are the things that we really need to be out thinking about how we're going to develop and grow. We talk about diversification. These are those things. They're still energy related, but they're from a different angle and they are that value added. And how do we get there? So those are my questions. Are those things for the
Okay.
interim?
Yeah,
All right, yes.
Yeah, on that there is one interim topic on the list that I think gets at the need there or the challenge there. With the Wyoming Energy Authority and their bonding capacity, I think there's a desire to discuss and understand what can be done with that bonding capacity. And one of the things that could potentially be done gets back to this idea of bringing an equity stake to investment from the state of Wyoming, where the bonds are revenue bonds and you're basically providing a vehicle to get a project started. Because there are technologies available, there are projects available to do everything that you just said with Wyoming resources in great ways. What isn't available is like the attractive capital that brings somebody to come and do it in Wyoming. When you mention natural gas, you can look up the Shell Pearl project, which was completed about 10 years ago. I think it's in Cotter, if I'm not mistaken. It's basically close to zero water in fully natural gas, methane based, methane to liquids. So they bring methane in, produce gasoline basically. And because of the excess hydrogen, you can do that, right? Your gasoline is typically a 2-to-1, 2 hydrogens to 1 carbon. Natural gas is obviously CH4, so you've got excess hydrogens available. So you can actually partially combust the natural gas to provide the energy to run the water gas shift reaction. You produce the water, you produce the energy, you produce everything you need. And again, they've done that. But Shell Pearl was, $40 billion or something like that. And it would work. It would work in Wyoming. We would consume a tremendous amount of natural gas at low prices. We would make gasoline, and all you need is the $40 billion of seed capital to make a bunch of money on that project. And we just keep running into that problem where over the years that I've been on the minerals committee, great projects have been pitched, but none of them have a price tag that doesn't have a B in it, I swear.
On that very subject, one of the oil guys or natural gas guys from Casper tried to team up with one of the richest guys in America at Buffalo to put in a natural gas plant to take it to liquids. And the richest guy said it wasn't a good investment. Kind of disappointed Mick on the deal, but he couldn't get anybody interested in putting the money up to do it. But he had a place for it and everything, and he had the water right there. They didn't need coal, but they were going to run natural gas in there.
Mr. Chairman, committee, my apologies. I needed in the school facilities committee that I didn't.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll excuse you.
Mr. Chairman, my point being is that just because it hasn't worked in the past or we haven't done it in the past doesn't mean it won't work. It's something that we, in the interim, we really need to really think about these types of topics and how do we get to them? And I realize that it all takes a lot of money and it all takes a lot of thought, but that's, in my opinion, that's when we need to be talking about it, is in the interim as a committee. And
Yeah.
we got some really sharp guys in here, you know, we need to, and every corner of the state of Wyoming can profit from those type of, you know, you talk about our economic districts. I think that's a fair topic.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, Mike.